I felt for many years that saying certain words was the bane of my existence. Countless speaking situations really ingrained the vicious cycle of fearing to speak. I was Google searching stuttering after having a particularly bad speech incident. That's when I found Coach Lee Lovett. If you saw the definition of cloud nine in the dictionary, my picture would be right beside it. Hello, everyone. It's really a pleasure and an honor for me to be able to share some of my experiences, thoughts, and ideas about stuttering, my speech journey. Before I go further, I must thank Mr. Lee G. Lovett and everyone else connected to the great community known as the World Stop Stuttering Association. I wouldn't be here if it were not for Lee's incredible efforts and dedicated commitment to stop stuttering in the world. In the beginning of one of Lee's great books, he makes an excellent point of needing to define words so that the writer and the reader are on common ground. I would like to take a step further and share another distinction about words. For that, I'm going to read a quote from a book titled The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Don't get stuck on the level of words. A word is no more than a means to an end. It's an abstraction, not unlike a signpost. It points beyond itself. The word honey isn't honey. You can study and talk about honey for as long as you like, but you won't really know. You won't really know it until you taste it. After you have tasted it, the word becomes less important to you. You won't be attached to it anymore. Now you might be thinking, what does this have to do with stuttering? Well, I think it may have a lot to do with it. On the surface, most people would say stuttering is a problem with words. Indeed, I felt for many years that saying certain words was the bane of my existence. Then I read John Harrison's book, Redefining Stuttering, and he used the term holding back. And it hit me that more than just fearing saying certain words and then stuttering, maybe holding back was at the root of my speech impediment. Allow me to take you on a trip down my memory's lane, back to when I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I lived in a small town with my family, my aunt and her boys. My siblings and cousins were all older than me. The summer holidays were over, and all the kids in our families were at the first day of school, except me. I was still too young, and I remember standing outside alone wondering, how was I going to play all by myself? Suddenly, there was this boy, bigger than me, and he was rushing towards me. I turned towards him, and before I could think of anything to say or do, he punched me right in my solar plexus. I didn't know it was my solar plexus back then, but I sure knew the blinding light of bright, sharp pain that doubled me over onto the ground. I must have screamed or cried out, and that perhaps made the kid run away. All I really recall is he was gone as fast as he came, and I was alone again, and now also in a lot of pain. As human beings living on this planet, we all have had traumatic experiences growing up. Some may be so harsh that they are blocked from your subconscious mind, conscious or subconscious. When we may have experiences that our young minds don't know how to properly process, we develop ways and means to protect ourselves. All life on earth is hardwired for self-preservation. And voila, for as long as I then remembered, I dreaded meeting other people. And yep, you guessed it, I would stutter when I did have to speak. It also definitely did not help having a very domineering father. I loved my dad, and he has passed on now. And I know he was just doing the best he could as a parent of his generation and culture. Parents are only human and so can never be perfect. So that was what it was. And yes, as I grew older, countless speaking situations really ingrained the vicious cycle of fearing to speak and then stuttering when trying to express myself. It was too far of a stretch for me to realize then that stuttering was just my subconscious's way of protecting me from getting punched in the gut again. So many years passed, and of course, stuttering or holding back became second nature to me. I was as conditioned as Pavlov's dogs were when he rang the bell. Over these years, I did get some speech therapy while in school, and my SLP. She was such a sweet lady. But back then, and perhaps even to this day, conventional speech therapy may not be effective enough to dissolve years of hardened conditioning and stuttering memories, negative experiences, which anxious, sweaty, embarrassing speaking situations just make stronger and stronger. I would go to my local library. Yes, I am of that generation. When growing up, we had no internet, no Google websites or Zoom meetings with stutter support groups like what Lee and the great group at WSSA has now created. I recall my excitement and relief when I found a book on the shelf in the library called Stuttering Solved. I read it feverishly, page after page, and tried over and over the speech fluency technique described to the best of my ability. Maybe I was not smart enough to figure it out, or perhaps the author purposefully wrote in vague and general terms so I would sign up to fly to New York and pay 2,000 US dollars to attend one of his workshops. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I did not have that kind of money back then, and so that became a dead end. Finally, the internet burst on the scene, and somehow I came across a stuttering self-therapy book marketed on AOL. Anyone still using AOL? Anyway, the author, a stutterer himself, was an engineer by trade, but had stumbled upon an old broadcaster's hack for deepening your voice. And he realized that practicing this technique over and over again was creating new neural pathways in his brain. Hence the title of that book, Neural Patterning for Stutterers. I whipped out my checkbook faster than Billy the Kid. I finally got the booklet in the mail and diligently began the exercises. And surprise, surprise, after about a month of doing the drills religiously every day, I found myself becoming very fluent in common speaking situations. If you saw the definition of cloud nine in the dictionary, my picture would be right beside it. I felt like Leo DiCaprio shouting, "I'm king of the world" on the Titanic. Little did I know that I was on a Titanic of my own making. I started making plans for creating a huge business venture that I always dreamed of. Stuttering was not going to hold me back anymore. I began having meetings with potential investors and partners, and my days became busier and busier. Soon my practice sessions were sacrificed to allow me to keep working on my new business project and keep up with my existing job. The stakes were getting higher, and as I was going into these meetings, phone calls, I was feeling the pressure of all the things I was doing. And sure enough, my old conditioning started kicking in, and I began stuttering more and more. Finally, it got so bad that I was not just stuttering on words, but full on blocking, where I could not say anything at all. I was the driving force of the project, but my enthusiasm for it was vanishing as fast as my newfound fluency. I was experiencing firsthand that stuttering in speaking situations is just the tip of the iceberg. Below the surface was a mountain of ice, years of past stuttering experiences and conditioning that was not going to let me go so easily. My discouragement was so complete that I stopped practicing the technique that I learned. I thought that it was not the answer to my problems since I relapsed into stuttering again. Now, let's fast forward to about 10 years ago when I came across the book I mentioned earlier, The Power of Now. This would become a very profound and life-changing book for me. Stuttering was never mentioned in that book, not even once. Yet, after reading it from cover to cover, I swear I was as fluent as any non-stutterer out there. I did not know for sure why I became so fluent at that time. Looking back with what I know now, I think that since stuttering is a form of resistance to what is here and now, when I was immersed in the power of now, there was resistance to nothing, and hence my stuttering vanished. But as you may guess, I began to let my mind take me out of the now. And sure enough, slowly but surely, my old conditioning came back to reassert itself. And finally, in 2017, lo and behold, I was Google searching stuttering after having a particularly bad speech incident. And you would be right on the money if you said that that's when I found Coach Lee Lovett. I will confess, I was older and jaded by then, almost ambivalent. Since I had worked out a life that accommodated my speech handicap to a certain extent. By the way, I'm 57 now. Unlike Lee, I'm not at all concerned with anyone knowing how old I am. It's just reframing as far as I'm concerned. Old is gold, Lee, and don't you forget it, sir. But I envy the young whippersnappers who will find the Lee Lovett method. I know that if it was available when I was younger, I would have ravenously devoured all the content that is now so copiously and easily available on the WSSA website. In my opinion, the genius of Lee Lovett was to concoct and combine the three key components he explains in great detail within his excellent books. This 1-2-3 punch that Prathusha, Javier, Clifton, and the other great coaches of WSSA refer to and teach students so well. These are the ingredients that, when mixed together and applied equally, dissolves and can finally vanquish the years of conditioning and crippling speech impediments that plague all stutters. I like to think of the mind training as the inner work, the crutches as the outer work, and the reading aloud that energizes them both. In conclusion, there were many twists and turns in my speech journey, many lows and thankfully highs as well. I feel blessed for everything that has happened to me because I've learned not only about communicating better with others, but perhaps more importantly, about communicating within myself. Kindly indulge me to close with another short excerpt, a parable from Tolle's book. A beggar had been sitting by the side of the road for over 30 years. One day, a stranger walked by. Spare some change, mumbled the beggar, mechanically holding out his old baseball cap. I have nothing to give you, said the stranger. Then he asked, What's that you are sitting on? Nothing, replied the beggar. Just an old box. I've been sitting on it for as long as I can remember. Ever looked inside? Asked the stranger. Nah, said the beggar. What's the point? There's nothing in there. Have a look inside, insisted the stranger. The beggar managed to pry open the lid. With astonishment, disbelief, and elation, he saw that the box was filled with gold. I am that stranger who has nothing to give you and who is telling you to look inside, not inside any box, as in the parable, but somewhere even closer, inside yourself.